Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love. Oh boy, bunch of stuff to talk about today on the podcast. The draft, the NFL draft, my NFL football fans, which is kind of the cherry on top of the cake as far as moving from last season, really into this year as far as new rosters are concerned. We had free agency, which was built with a lot of news. And now we just finished the draft on Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'll give my thoughts on those, the big stories, and the teams I think won the draft. I know it's a bit premature to say who won the draft, but, as far as the top, or I don't know why I did air quotes or attempted to there, but as far as the big prospects or highly talented prospects, we know who got the most of them and see and assess those drafts, give my thoughts on those. Also, now down to the final 8 as we gear towards the race closer and closer to who is the NBA champions of 2021-2022 season. But before that, I'm Ajoe21love. Thank you all for being here. If you're new to the podcast, sports overview topics, find more videos on the homepage, and if you want to see more of sports overview topics covering all the sports rumors and big topics out there as it pertains to sports, but nonetheless, click that subscription down there if you want to see more of these videos. You can find when I post them. Click the notifications bar there. But thank you all. Let's get started. So, the NFL drafts culminated Saturday around evening, because going through the draft process is Thursday night, round 1, for a couple hours. Night 2 on Friday, rounds 2 and 3, and then Saturday morning through evening-ish, we have rounds 4 through 7, the end of the draft, basically. But good stuff. We had some very newsworthy points coming out of the draft. First, I won't go through every team's draft, but I will go over most of the big points and most of the teams that kind of had a really good draft process, in my opinion. But so, as far as the first round goes, I'll go with the teams that. Well, first I'll start with the top 5. So, Trayvon Walker. Now, the way it seemed to me, there were 5 prospects that could win round 1 to the Jaguars. That were Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, and blanking on another guy, but my point as far as defensive and offense tackles. But was a very good draft, or very buzzworthy. But ultimately, when the favorite was Trayvon or Hayden Hutchinson, it was Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. Now, after letting it sink in, I can sort of access it and more understand why they went Walker over Hutchinson, because you're in. Now, before I get to that, the scheme he ran at Georgia, Georgia's defense, what was rated throughout the draft, just rated, along with receivers, etc. Georgia's defense was the best in college football last season, and one of the anchors for that defense was Trayvon Walker. Now, he's a big guy. He's not the prototypical edge rusher we saw at Georgia. At Georgia, we saw more. With Hutchinson, we saw an edge rusher more on the outside, more actually gearing towards rushing the passer, rushing the quarterback. With Walker, we saw he's bigger. He was more of a set the edge, disruptor, go for the end. Plus, he's bigger than Hutchinson. And the point I was going to get to first, but nonetheless, you're in a division where up against Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, two of the best running backs in the NFL, arguably 1 and 2 in the NFL, and most notably Henry. We know he's a running back with size, very big running back. And Walker, he can set the edge, but also he's a big boy, we know. And in order to stop Henry, you're going to need some size and you're going to need some ultimate power. So for those aspects, I can understand why they took Walker. And Josh Allen, we know he's a very good edge rusher. He's more of an edge. He's more closer, I think, to Hutchinson than Walker. So for that aspect, I can more understand why they took Walker over Hutchinson. But he went and won. Obviously, we saw it right away, pretty much almost simultaneously after Walker was picked. The pick was in by the Lions, and they took Hutchinson. Like with Pickett, who fell to Pittsburgh at 20, these home state kids staying pat, as Hutchinson went to Michigan, and he will stay in Michigan as a member of the Detroit Lions. Big do for Detroit. Detroit fans, it's been a long time since really relevance, and you know, it's definitely been a while since their team's been relevant. And with training Stafford, with no longer having Megatron, you need those generation players that are gonna set the tone for this new coaching staff, or the second year coaching staff, that you want to develop. You want to get excitement for this fan base. And I love what they're doing in Detroit, as far as the coach staff with Dan Campbell, Terry Glenn on defense, Brad Holmes, GM. I mean, they got studs, and I know there wasn't a lot of wins last season for Detroit, but I saw the development, I saw the guttiness. Because against Minnesota the first time, against Baltimore, there were those games where just nut punchers of last minute finishes, and then they got a couple wins, and good for them. But these generation players you need for your team, and Hutchinson is going to be one, especially in a team that needs a pass rusher, needs to get some big excitement on defense. So, big plus for them. At 3, this was really the first team of the draft where Texans could have picked, pretty much anyone, I would say, except a quarterback, because Texans have a lot of holes on their team. And they took Stingley, Derek Stingley Jr. at LSU. I'm glad he went in the top 5, because everyone knows he had, when LSU had that great year in 2019 with Joe Burrow, all those guys, Patrick Queen, Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Thaddeus Moss, etc. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was a big part as well on defense. Now, he has regressed a bit in the last couple of years, so I was worried that he would take a bit of a drop, perhaps in 20s. I'm not saying out of the first round, but I'm saying you were curious to see where he was going to go. And for the Texans, they thought it was best to take him at 3. And, as I just mentioned with Troy, generational players to get excitement for your fan base. Derek Stingley is an intriguing aspect for the Texans now. You know what I mean? One of the teams I think won the draft as far as their picks and their whole philosophy was concerned. At 4, Jets took Sauce Gardner. This was pretty much the only pick in the top 5 that was kind of set in stone. That was, we kind of knew that it was going to happen. So, Sauce, Cincinnati, you know, did not allow a touchdown in college. I mean, I know for Jets fans, he'd been starving for the next Darrelle Revis, and perhaps he can be that and more possibly. At 5, Kayvon Thibodeau for the Giants, he fell not so much. Not so much. I mean, he was another guy you were curious to see where he's going to go. I am going at 10 because you just hearing the reports about his work ethic, etc. I mean, not participating in the drills at the combine. I mean, just little things that may rub people the wrong way. But luckily, he was there at 5 for Giants. The teams that notably had multiple picks in the first round, I would say, did admiral jobs for both sides. Jaguars, I just mentioned, at first took Trayvon Walker, and at the end, in the 20s, they took, with their other first round pick, Devin Lloyd. I mean, big plus there as well. I mean, Lloyd was a guy I saw throughout the draft that could go anywhere from top 10 to the bottom of the draft. He had that much talent, but I mean, not spoken about enough. And I mean, considering the linebackers they have lost since that great defense in 2017, this was a need, and that was great to see for the Jaguars and Duval. Lions, before Hollywood Brown and AJ Brown getting traded in the first round, you could say that the biggest surprise or wow moment was the Lions trading with their division rival Vikings 20 to move up 20 spots, give 3 picks, and move up 20 spots to take Jamison Williams. I mean, Jamison Williams, we knew had top 10 level talent, and many people had him as the top receiver entering the draft. Now, of course, he tore his ACL in the national championship game against Georgia in January, so obviously there was a reason for him to slide, but due to this trade, he didn't move by much, or he didn't slide much. So good for him, and pretty much a sigh of relief for Jared Goff. I mean, most people who saw the Lions last season would understand that, okay, they may take a receiver to the up, but you looked at the team and you also realized that they had good signs. It's just they didn't have a lot of talent. And for the Lions, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown last year, who had a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, came on strong late. He signed DJ Chark in free agency, who has some speed. Now you get Jameson Williams, provided he's healthy when time comes. And then TJ Hawkinson at tight end. That's if you're a now yeah, you saw Jared Goff, and he doesn't get a lot of people excited about the way he plays, but you know, there's reason for optimism in Detroit. There's definitely reasons for Detroit to be excited about the future. And I mean, the Jets. It's kind of hard to argue with what they did in this draft. I mean, they kind of blew me away. I mean, really. They took Sauce Gardner at 4, I just mentioned. Garrett Wilson, I'll say, arguably the best receiver in the draft at 10, to pair with Elijah Moore on the other side. You know, Corey Davis. And then they come back into later in the first round, take Jermaine Johnson III. And I mean, and they also took Breece Hall in the second round and Jeremy Rucker. Just to add, because they took Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzama in free agencies. So, I mean, if you're Zach Wilson, you got a good amount of weapons to help you on offense and to win football games. So, I mean, Jets fans, I know it's been a while. I know it's been tough sledding, but, you know, GM Joe Douglas seems like he knows what he's doing, and, you know, just good talent, good talent. The Saints, you know, I must say, they had 2 very good picks in the first round. You know, very telling picks also in the first round. They traded up at 11 with Washington Commanders to get Chris Olave. Now, they had, you know, the Saints, I get it, Drew Brees not there anymore, and Sean Payton. But assessing the situation from last season, Jameis did well. He didn't do great, but he didn't crap the bed. He did well before he got hurt. And despite that, despite the injuries, Michael Thomas, etc., they still won 9 games and were that close away from making the playoffs. Oh, and not to mention they beat Brady and the Bucks twice. So, I mean, there's that. So, I mean, when you look at the Saints assessing 2022, they are still one of the top teams in the NFC. And Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, I mean, hats off to both picks. Both really good picks. Of course, if you followed the mock draft, I had them taking Trevor Penning, but at 16, they took him to 19. I had them taking Jameson Williams at 19, but they tripped to get a different receiver at 11. Close, but no cigar. But still kind of a win in my books. But great for both. I mean, we know for a couple years they've been longing for a number 2 next to Michael Thomas. Now, provided he comes back healthy, Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, 2 Ohio State alumni, can really threaten some defenses in 2022 and so on. Trevor Penning, I mean, he was a shoe-in. I mean, the loose Teron Armstead, who was there for a number of years, protecting Drew Brees' blind side, including last year with Jameis and all the quarterbacks then. But yeah, Trevor Penning out of North Iowa, probably the sleeper of the first round, I would say. I mean, the Giants had 2 hell of a first round picks in the top 10. Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal. I mean, the Giants declined Daniel Jones' 5th-year option, and people speculating their heads, with the uncertainties when it comes to the quarterbacks, they were like, well, are they going to take a quarterback? Are they really done with Daniel Jones? But I think this draft showed by Joe Shane in his first draft as Giants head or GM, he is making a case to show the G-men and Giants fans that, okay, Daniel Jones, we're going to give you one last shot to succeed this year. If it doesn't work, then that's it. But they're really trying to build a team around him. Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau, I mean, I imagine putting Andrew Thomas on one side, Evan Neal on the other. Good stuff there. Kayvon Thibodeau, because, I mean, you drafted Azeez Ojulari last year in the later rounds and got 8 sacks. So, I mean, pairing him, Thibodeau, you also got Big Cat Leonard Williams. I mean, those are 3 really good faces to have on your defense line and edge rusher to attack the quarterback. Get to the Ravens. The Ravens, I have to say. Well, I'm going to get to the trades, but before I get into the teams, but, still have to mention the Ravens, Ravens traded, this was kind of the first big trade. Because, I mean, Lions traded with Vikings, but then there's basically domino effect as far as the players went and then trades and etc. Madness. So the Ravens selected Kyle Hamilton, who I'm surprised he fell, but at the same time not surprised because people were buzzing about his forward time, play 4.5s. Nonetheless, the best safety in the draft out of Notre Dame. He fell to the Ravens. Great spot for him. But later, they traded back into the draft with the Cardinals in the 20s. They traded Marquise Hollywood Brown. And to the Cardinals. Now, for those who have obviously followed the Cardinals, you'll know the Kyle Murray situation, that little drama, whatever you want to say. It's been a little bit of a distraction, but nonetheless, I would say the Cardinals really did a good job of if they wanted to make Kyler Murray happy as far as non-financial and with players, I'd say they did a really hell of a job doing that. Because they traded for Hollywood Brown to reunite with his former Oklahoma teammate, his former Sooner teammate, Kyler Murray. That connection is reunited. You still got DeAndre Hopkins, although with the news today that he's going to be suspended for the first 6 games, it's going to be a little dicey to start. But you still have him. You have AJ Green, who resigned. Rondell Moore, he showed some good flashes last season. At tight end, you re-signed Zach Ertz. And then in the second round, they took Trey McBride, who was, in many eyes, number 1 tight end in the draft out of Colorado State. So, hell of a job for the Cardinals as far as the sweetening the pot deal for Kyler Murray. There's that. The Titans, though, I would say if I were to talk about the team that was probably the most good but puzzling and buzzworthy when you talk about the drafts, I would say it'd be the Tennessee Titans. Now, I'm not saying they had the best draft. I'm saying the most buzzworthy. The reason I say that, although they had a good draft, they had some good picks. They traded the biggest blockbuster on day one, and arguably the whole draft. They traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles to move up to 18. Now, again, for those who have followed the news across this offseason, you'll know that A.J. Brown wants a new deal. And, there's been this trend of wide receivers getting paid pretty much almost quarterback money. And, I'm not saying it's the best idea, but it's what's been happening. And, Titans made a choice with their investments. Eagles gave him a 4-year, $100 million extension, $25 million per year. The Titans did not want to get near that. And that's what happened. So they took Treylon Burks, very good receiver out of Arkansas, with the 18th pick, basically saying, okay, not going to take on the financials. We'll just pick this up and coming guy, and hopefully he does good, if not better, than what he did here in Tennessee. Although he did a high bargain, he had a lot of production for Tennessee in his 3 years there. But it is what it is. But as big as that was, what might be bigger is, so there was obviously buzz about this quarterback class, not being good as past years. So Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback taken in the first round at 20 by Steelers. In the third round, the Titans traded up, and they took, who in many eyes obviously was going to go in the first round, had to wait till seat 3, day 2, Malik Willis, taken by the Titans. Now, everyone who watches the podcast will know that I was not a fan of how people of the backlash Ryan Tannehill got after that playoff loss in against the Bengals, which sent them home 1-done for the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, Tannehill has done very good the last 3 seasons since taking over the starter as in Tennessee over Marcus Mariota. But of course we know, in 2019, they lost to the Chiefs in the AFC title game. 2020, lost against the Ravens in a tight one. And then, of course, against the Bengals, throwing 3 interceptions, losing a tight one there. But Malik Willis, this probably saying that Tannehill is probably not going to say past his current deal. So their eyes are about the future, grooming Malik Willis, be the future, and it's going to be intriguing to watch in Tennessee. Tennessee Obviously, it's a team that's gotten a lot of flack from the media for their underachieving, etc. Considering the style they play. You know, the league is gearing towards all this passing and etc. But and Tennessee is a run physical team. Now, in just a couple days, they have generated some unknown excitement. I would say unknown excitement for the future, which kind of strange for Tennessee. But as far as or so, I might as well go through the end of the first round and then talk about the teams I think that won the draft. But Jets, I mentioned, had a very good draft. The Ravens, Eric DeCosta, I would say also about that Holly Brown deal, perhaps they're higher on Rashad Bateman. DeCosta said that, well, Brown wanted a trade going into the offseason, and Eric DeCosta obliged, and that's how it goes. But yeah, I also imagine they're high on Rashad Bateman, but it brings another uncertainty to Lamar Jackson's long-term future in Baltimore. But we'll see. But yeah, they had a heck of draft as well. I just mentioned, Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Lindenbaum, you know, out of Northern Iowa. They got David Ajoe, which I'm not surprised he fell to the extent he did. I was hoping he'd still get into the first round, but David Ajoe, who obviously was the Robin to Hutchinson's Batman, tore his Achilles in the offseason. We don't know when he'll be back, but provided he can get back to what he was, being a bit of a steal for the Ravens. And Travis Jones out of Connecticut, another heck of a player to line up in there on the D-line. With Brandon Williams, obviously, with Calais Campbell, it's going to be an intriguing affair in Baltimore. Texans, I already mentioned earlier that you got reason for excitement in the future, but first off, Stingley, yes, was a surprise. Kenyon Green, with their other pick in the first round, very good for them. Sliding next to Laremy Tunsil, more added protection for, Davis Mills. Christian Harris, I thought was another good pickup out of Alabama. John Mechie as well. John Mechie, when he gets healthy. John Mechie, Brandon Cooks, and I'm not sure if Amendola is still there, but that's a tight three to have to throw to if you're Davis Mills. So good for Houston, good for Nick Caserio. I'm not surprised because Nick Caserio obviously spent many years in New England. I was hoping, and obviously I picked the Patriots to select Kenyon Green in the first round, at the end of the first round. But, yeah, a former New England alumni, Nick Caserio, takes Kenyon Green. So there's that. And then a team I have not mentioned yet, but I will now, the Seattle Seahawks. They had a very underrated good draft. A good draft. I mean, they need to help on their own line, provide who their quarterback is for next season. They took Charles Cross at number 9 out of Mississippi State. They took Abraham Lucas in the later rounds and the mid round. They took Boye Mafe, who is, we know, was kind of a fringe 2/day 1 out of Minnesota, edge rusher. Good for them. They took Kenneth Walker at running back. You know, we know they like a system, a committee of running backs. And I mean, Chris Carson got hurt. You know, Rashad Penny has not really lived up to his potential since picking him. Kenneth Walker will only provide more to that backfield. I mean, just one hell of a draft for Seattle. I would say hats off to John Schneider. So, yeah, but those are my teams that I think. I'm not going to say won the draft because I know people are understandably distasteful when people say, well, someone won the draft when the players have not played. And I get that, but these teams, I think, had good drafts when it came to taking the talent that was most up the boards or projected. If I had to change my words a little. Now we're down to the final 8. I would be foolish if I didn't chime in that the first round of the NBA playoffs, the quarterfinals, was very much hit or miss. I would say hit or miss. You know, I mean, most of what we expected, given who was healthy, who was not. You know, obviously the Luka situation, him being back in Game 3, obviously helped propel the Mavericks to their first playoff series win since winning the NBA title a dozen years ago. So kudos to them. And so I'll go down series by series, give my thoughts on each team, and there's that. Maybe some pointers, maybe, but if you read the thumbnail, you know that what I'm about to say. But first, Miami Heat, they beat the Atlanta Hawks in 5 games. You know, Jimmy Butler, he was on fire this series. I mean, Jimmy Butler has not really been at that level for some people, the way LeBron, KD, I mean, the way Luka's been, the way Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, he's not been at that level. Right? Some people are discussing the best players, but I mean, Jimmy Butler became Jimmy Buckets so far, and hopefully he can just get back healthy. He had some inflammation that may have missed the final game in the series, but that Miami Heat defense is playing really good. Really good. Trae Young, disappointing. I would say disappointing. He was last year in the playoffs, he opened many's eyes. He had a solid series. First, the Knicks. He willed his team over the 76ers, and then against the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference, it was so-so. But this was disappointing for Trae Young. I mean, hard to say, but I mean, only single digits in many in pretty much all the games, except maybe 2 games, the whole series, but the majority, only single digits. I mean, when it comes to superstars and stars, even their bad games, they're in double digits. But that was disappointing again, the Hawks were in the play-in. They beat the Cavs and beat the Hornets, but Trae Young basically no-showed versus the Heat. And yes, you could say it's also a great defense from the Heat, who played great defense the whole series, but Trae Young, yeah. The 76ers, Philadelphia 76ers beat the Toronto Raptors in 6 games. It looked a bit worrisome for the 76ers because in game 3, it took an overtime winner from Embiid to win in Toronto, and then they faulted the ongoing 2 games, making it 3-2. And then the injury to Embiid does not help, and the thumb injury, and then, but luckily for them, James Harden helped out Maxey. He has stepped up well. Tobias Harris, etc. But the big issue is now Joel Embiid is dealing with another injury besides his right thumb ligament. He suffered a concussion and a orbital fracture. Now, if the 76ers are going to have any hopes versus the Miami Heat, he's got to be healthy. I said before, if the 76ers want to go out to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even the Finals, James Harden needs to play better. Now it seems with Joel Embiid's status being unknown, James Harden, Maxey, and Tobias, they all have to play much better. The Raptors, obviously we know them as the NBA title team that beat the injury-riddled Warriors a couple seasons ago with Kawhi, Kyle Lowry. In this series, hats off to them. They've been a gritty team all year behind, Van Fleet, Siakam, Scotty Barnes. He got hurt the first game, NBA Rookie of the Year. Came back in the middle of the series, looked very hobbled, but still managed to get what he could done. But, good for six. Nick Nurse is a heck of a coach. He's a heck of a coach for Toronto, and, just how it goes sometime with 76ers. The Bucks versus the Bulls. I'm not going to get too much in this. The Bulls behind a team that I'll mention in a bit were the most disappointing team to me in the first round of the playoffs. Because DeMar DeRozan he had a great regular season. He had a great game too, 41 points. Following game, he did okay. He had 23, excuse me. But when you're a guy that some are talking about as an MVP candidate, including myself at one point in the season, you need to play better. Now, I know they got Zach LaVine, Caruso, Vucevic there, but still, you gotta help talent around you when you're that kind of player. And I know Lonzo was there as well for the whole series, but just unfortunate. The Bucks, they had to kind of resolve themselves or adapt. Chris Middleton, he went out game 2 with MCL injury. Bobby Portis, he got hit with a big hit to his eye. He was mostly wearing goggles throughout the series. He, however, had a very good series. Giannis doing Giannis things, and good for them. They did their job. I think going forward, Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez will be quite instrumental as well as far as where they wind up at the end of these playoffs. Now the Celtics and the Nets. 4 games. Sweep, sweep, sweep. Celtics, man, you know, they just keep surprising me. I mean, as a guy who enjoys the Celtics, I mean, you just go with the flow. I mean, this core of the team, you know, Tatum, Marcus Smart, although he got hurt first the Milwaukee Bucks, so see about him. But him, Jaylen Brown, I mean, that's a very good core for the team. And Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, big, good defenders. This team is just very good and very good to see. I'm a little surprised, but I get it, that M.A. Udoka was not a finalist for Coach of the Year, and whoever will win it will deserve it between Spoelstra, Taylor Jenkins, and Monty Williams, but good team. Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets were the most disappointing team for me this first round by a good margin. By a good margin. You know, Kevin Durant, he underperformed. Kyrie was inconsistent. And you can kind of see the issue after they beat the Cavs in the playing game. That they don't really have a consistent number 3 that they can go to if one of those guys is having an off game or a subpar game. I mean, they have a lot of decent pieces. You know, Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin. I mean, of course, Joe Harris was injured. You know, etc. It's just a weird. Now I get it. They were one of the top seeds in the NBA before KD's injury. But I mean, the reason why I said on the thumbnail that their future is looking a bit unknown or bleak, the reason why I say that is because Kyrie, even though I love his play, he missed a vast majority of the games due to not being vaccinated. And that hurt them. He even mentioned that hurt the team, especially with KD's injury. That hurt the team. And then there's Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, who basically the big trade of the NBA season at the NBA trade deadline was James Harden for Ben Simmons and Seth Curry, who I will say had a decent season for the Nets as well, but Ben Simmons did not play at all this season for the 76ers or the Nets. And I mean, you know, it's going to be kind of difficult to attract some free agents. I'm not saying they won't get players, but I'm saying, you know, okay, do you want to go to a team that has Kyrie and Ben Simmons? Two guys. Now, Kyrie can be great on the court. There's no debate. Ben Simmons, he did well, obviously, until he got the slack about his play, and then really hasn't done anything on the court. I mean, it's just a head scratcher for those who are going to be trying to hope for the Brooklyn Nets' future, but we'll see. I will say, though, going from the team that disappointed me in the first round to the team that impressed me the most in losing fashion, the New Orleans Pelicans. They lost in 6 versus the Phoenix Suns, who were without Devin Booker. He went out in game 2 with a hamstring injury, came back for game 6, but, Brandon Ingram showed something for me. Jonas Valanciunas showed something. Jose Alvarado, they got a bright future in New Orleans. The Zion situation is obviously unknown, but I like the future with Willie Green as the head coach. I like where they're headed. As for the Suns, it was obviously a inconsistent process without your best player, Devin Booker, but they held tight. Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, they are just a deep team, which you love to see. You love to see. The Mavericks and the returning Luka, who I just mentioned, they won in 6 versus the Utah Jazz. Luka, he scored 30 points in game 3 and looked okay, but looked a bit off, and then just went off and off and off. I mean, it was either game 3 or game 4. I know that. I think it was game 4, but nonetheless, yeah, because Mavericks went 2-1 without him. Jalen Brunson had a hell of a showing. See how they do against the Suns, but I mean, Mavericks are nitty and gritty. The Utah Jazz, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, you had Jordan Clarkson, Yuri Gobert, Bojan Bogdanovic, Donovan Mitchell, and Mike Conley. They were the 5th seed and were one and done. I just credit Luke was back, but I mean, now I must also credit Spencer Dinwiddie and Mark Kleber for The Mavericks, they also stepped up as well in Luka's absence, but Jason Kidd has done a good job adapting in his first year for the Mavericks. The Golden State Warriors are back on track. They won in 5 versus Denver Nuggets, and the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. I mean, I said it, if Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. were both able to return and be themselves for the Nuggets, then this team would be a good outing to come out of the West. But Jamal Murray didn't come back. And I mean, they did win Game 4 in an exciting fashion. But nonetheless, they lost. They had good fight. It wasn't, there weren't some blowout games in this series. The Nuggets showed heart. I loved Monte Morris near the end of the series. He did well. But yeah, it's just Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole. I mean, they're healthy. I mean, Draymond Green. I mean, it's just almost looking like a couple years ago. They're getting good at the right time. Now, what may have been the most exciting series of the first round would have been Memphis Grizzlies versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Grizzlies 1-6, and John Morant, he was inconsistent throughout the series, but after some adaptations, I would say that Ja found his groove, and same with the Grizzlies. I mean, Derek Bain, Jared Jackson Jr., Desmond Clark, they played well. Now, the Timberwolves had their moments, and this is why it was so tough to pick this series. This was the toughest series I had to pick out of the first round because the Timberwolves, you could say, have better talent than the Grizzlies, but they're both really young teams, and I picked I picked the Timberwolves in a late game series. Obviously, I was wrong, but the Grizzlies, hats off to them. And I miss game 2 gearing into their series versus the Warriors, which should be fun the rest of the way. But nonetheless, those are my thoughts on the quarterfinals, hopefully the semifinals, as we're down to 8. The Heat, the 76ers, Bucks and Celtics, Grizzlies, Warriors, Suns, and Mavericks. Only one will hold that Larry O'Brien trophy. And only one will be the NBA champions of this postseason. Who will it be? Not sure, but it will be a fun ride the rest of the way. But nonetheless, that's the episode for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. Gave my in-depth recap of the NFL draft along with the first round of the NBA playoffs, but Hope you guys enjoy it. If you did, of course, click that like in the corner, thumbs up, and the description also there. Find more videos on homepage, etc. Be back next week, but nonetheless, thank you all. Be safe. I'm Ajoe21love. Peace.